You know when you're watching the news, or maybe the Olympics, and you hear the terms England, Great Britain, and the UK, and they seem to be used kind of interchangeably? Well, if you've ever felt a little confused by it all, you are definitely not alone. It's a puzzle that trips so many people up, and honestly, for good reason.
So, what is the difference, really? Is England a country? What about Great Britain? Well, we're about to dive in and untangle this whole mess. And I promise, by the end of this, you're going to have this down cold.
All right, let's call this the Great Naming Puzzle. And the best way to solve any puzzle is to start with the biggest pieces first, right? So we're going to start with the widest possible view and then zoom our way in.
Okay, first up, the British Isles. Now here's the absolute key thing to remember about this one. It's a geographical term, not a political one. It's just the name for the whole group of islands off the coast of northwestern Europe. Think of it like a label on a map for the entire archipelago. The two big islands, Great Britain and Ireland, plus thousands of tiny ones. That's it, just geography. Now let's zoom in to the bigger of those two main islands. That's Great Britain. This is also a geographical name for the island itself, and here's where it gets a little tricky, it's also a political term. It describes the union of the three nations that actually share that piece of land: England, Scotland, and Wales.
And that brings us to the main event, the United Kingdom. This is the actual country, the sovereign state you see at the UN. And its full official name basically gives the whole game away. Get this, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. See, the answer's been hiding in plain sight the whole time. It tells you exactly what it's made of.
Okay, so let's just put this all together so it really sticks. This little table makes it super clear. The British Isles, purely geographical. Great Britain is that main island with England, Scotland, and Wales on it. And the United Kingdom is the political country that brings Great Britain together with Northern Ireland. See how that works? It's way simpler when you see it all laid out.
So, let's break it down. The UK is one country, but it's made up of four nations: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and each one has its own capital city. And this isn't just trivia, it has real-world effects. Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland have their own separate governments that handle things like education and healthcare. It really shows you how they keep their own distinct national identities inside this bigger union.
But this whole country of countries thing, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was built piece by piece over a very, very long time. So let's take a quick look back to see how this union was actually forged.
The first building blocks were laid way back in the 13th century when Wales was brought into the Kingdom of England. Then fast forward to 1707 and bam, a huge moment. England and Scotland formally unite and the Kingdom of Great Britain is born. Then in 1800, Ireland joins the club. But that version of the UK only lasted until 1922, when Southern Ireland became independent, leaving us with the country we know today, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
So we've got this union of four nations, pieced together over centuries. But how is it all governed? Who's actually in charge? This is where we get into the really unique relationship between the monarch and the government.
Okay, so the UK is what's called a constitutional monarchy. Now, what on earth does that mean? Well, it means you have a monarch, a king or a queen, who is the official head of state. But, and this is a big but, their power is mostly symbolic and seriously limited by law. The real power to make laws belongs to Parliament, which is elected by the people. This brings us to a really key split in duties. The monarch is the head of state. The prime minister is the head of government. Think of it this way. If the country were a giant ship, the monarch is the figurehead on the front, a symbol of the nation's pride and unity. But the prime minister, they're the captain on the bridge, with their hands on the wheel, actually running the government and making all the big policy decisions.
And speaking of the monarchy, here's a fun little quirk for you. The monarch actually gets two birthdays. Yep, two. There's their actual birthday, which is a private affair, and then there's an official public celebration in June. The tradition started so the country could have a big parade in the summer, hoping for better weather.
And the monarchy has had to be pretty adaptable to survive. For example, during World War I, anti-German feelings were, as you can imagine, running incredibly high. Well, the royal family's surname at the time was Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, which sounds pretty German, right? So in a brilliant PR move, King George V changed it to the very English-sounding Windsor, named after his castle.
All right, so we've done geography, history, and government. Let's switch gears. What does this union of countries actually look like today? What's the vibe of modern Britain? Let's do a quick-fire round of some key features.
First off, you really can't talk about modern Britain without mentioning Brexit. The name itself is just a mashup of British exit,
and it refers to the UK's decision to leave the European Union. It officially happened in 2020 after nearly half a century of membership, and it remains one of the biggest political and economic shifts in the country's recent history.
Now, on a much lighter note, let's talk about sports. The UK's cultural impact here is just massive. So many of the world's favorite games, we're talking soccer, rugby, cricket, even golf, were all basically invented, or at least written down with official rules here, before they exploded across the rest of the globe.
And that influence, it's just as huge when you look at literature. I mean, you can draw a straight line from the plays of Shakespeare and the novels of Jane Austen all the way to modern fantasy worlds created by J.R.R. Tolkien and J.K. Rowling. The UK's contribution to the world's bookshelf is, well, just immense.
So, if there's one big idea to walk away with from all this, it's this. The United Kingdom isn't just one single thing. It's a country of countries. It's a complex and, yeah, sometimes tense, but incredibly resilient union of 4 very distinct national identities, all living together under one state.
And that really brings us to the final thought. This unique political setup has managed to survive for centuries. It's evolved through treaties, wars, and public votes. But now, as it finds its way in a post-Brexit world and deals with all sorts of internal debates, the big question is, what will its next chapter be?